Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's Full Potential Show. I'm James Rick, and this is your #1 non-boring source for personal development. And today on the line, we have Kristine Carlson. Now, let me tell you a little bit about Kristine's story. Expanding on the phenomenal success of her late husband, Dr. Richard Carlson, he's the author of Don't Sweat the Small Stuff series. Kristine has continued to share her profound message of empowerment, success, emotional strength, and love. An unyielding believer of living in the moment and finding happiness in life, Chris has been featured on the national radio and television broadcasts, including the Today Show, Empowered Living Radio, The View, and the Oprah Winfrey Show. The theme for today's show here on Full Potential is there's a way to live a more empowered life no matter what happens. And we're really going to dive into the fact that all the tools that they've written about and they formed together have really come to aid Kristine in her own life and really save her life. And we're going to talk about what some of those tools are so that whether you're going through grief or you're starting to sweat some of the small or stuff that you think is big, this should all really help you today. Kristine, I'm so glad to have you on today's Full Potential Show. Thanks for being here.
Hey, James. It's so nice to be here with you, too.
Now, I know that a lot has happened since, everything that happened.
Right.
So talk to me about the transition, immediately after, and basically how you worked through this so that, we have an understanding of what you went through and what really saved you and helped you to thrive and take on the responsibility that you have.
All right. Well, let me just give your viewers just a little background on my story, just in case they don't know. You've probably heard of Don't Sweat the Small Stuff. At least if you haven't read it, if you're too young, then maybe your parents have it in their bathroom or something like that. I mean, the book has been a phenomenal success. It's still one of the top-selling books on the stress management list after 15 years. So
it's over 26 million books in print.
Right. Over 26 million books in print. So, our lives I met Richard when I was 18 years old in Pepperdine University. We fell in love instantly. We kind of lived that fairy tale charmed life. And one day, 22 years later, Richard went out the door to go on a book tour. This was almost 5 years ago, and he passed away very suddenly on a flight. Passed away from a pulmonary embolism on a flight. And on that day, which is we're almost at the 5th anniversary now, December 13th. That day started out like any other for me and my family, and for Richard too. And that day was the pivotal moment that really changed our lives very dramatically. But we went through that process of grieving, and, I won't say it's a process for the wary. It certainly is not. It was a very grueling process. Of course, healing is not always the most fun thing you do, but when you come out of that process, you really come out with the opportunity to live a new life. And certainly, I went through this grieving process. I didn't think many days I would survive, but I realized in the middle of it that my own outlook, our own philosophy, how I felt from the very moment I heard the news, I remember thinking to myself, wow, I can't believe this happened to us. I cannot believe that this happened to me. And I sort of sunk down into that place that everybody goes, but immediately I was reminded of, I just said to myself, wow, I am one of the most blessed individuals on the planet. I know that. I always have lived that way. And I thought, there's no accident to this. This happened, and I need to go through whatever I need to go through, but this has to count for something really big for me.
And so is this immediate reframe?
Yeah. And I think that came from the fact that, when you write books about not sweating the small stuff, and you can be happy no matter what, there's a lot of things in those books, and those things came out of the tools that Richard and I practiced every single day in our life. And I maintain that people who have bad things happen to them, that you have to go through whatever you need to go through during that time. It's not like you're going to be like the most positive thinking person on the planet when you're in grief.
It's not immediate.
That's not going to happen. No, it's not immediate. You're going to go through a process, but you will return to a level of health and a level of happiness that you were at possibly before, and maybe you'll even be happier. And that's the part that's really astounding that I learned, is that as I really took some of these things, like Richard wrote this book. I have it right here. I'll just show it to you.
Okay.
You can be happy no matter what, okay? This book was the foundational book of all of his books, really. And not a lot of people know that. I know that, of course, because I was his wife. So he wrote this book, and it's 5 principles for keeping life in perspective. And those 5 principles are really phenomenal, and they're all woven throughout the entire Don't Sweat the Small Stuff book series. And they are, if you want to hear them.
Yeah, I do. Let's run through them real fast.
Okay, all right. He talks about thoughts, moods, feelings, separate realities, and present moment living. And remember, this book is about keeping life in perspective. So Richard was a psychologist. I am not a psychologist. However, during this time when he was learning this form of psychology, I was tagging along. So very much to it's helped me a lot. Like, let's just say, as he brought me into the book series, you know, he wrote Don't Sweat the Small Stuff. He wrote Don't Sweat the Small Stuff at Work. He wrote Don't Sweat the Small Stuff with your family. Well, who do you think was feeding him all those
Right. He's like, who's feeding him the stuff he's sweating? So that he learns to not sweat it anymore.
Especially the family. So then after that, we wrote Don't Sweat the Small Stuff in Love together. And then I wrote Don't Sweat the Small Stuff for Women. And that's, you know, when you weave these 5 principles on how to keep life into perspective, thought, moods, feelings, separate realities, and present moment living, if you really carefully examine all of the Don't Sweat chapters, they are all about one of these principles. And I'd have to say, if I could give your viewers one thing today, is just that the thing that you have to realize the most, that's the most important aspect of Richard's work, or this work, is that your thoughts about life are really how you feel about life, that you are the thinker, that your experience of life is not randomly happening to you. It's not about the events that are going on in your life. It's about how you interpret the events that are going on in your life. And it's not to say that sometimes you're not going to misinterpret. I misinterpret things all the time. I still, you know, I'll get all caught up in my head about something, or all worried about something, all frenetic about something. But the difference is, all of a sudden I know what I'm doing. And it's sort of like your thoughts can be kind of like a runaway freight train. If you don't know you're doing it, it can run you all the way to Abilene. You know, you can go to Texas and not even intend on going to Texas, you know. But if you know you're the thinker, and you know that you have that in your power, that as soon as you recognize that you're on a train of thought that's taking you somewhere you don't want to go, then you can get off that train. And that's probably...
Yeah, and that's just it. And, you know, you begin to get triggered by when you're not feeling good.
Exactly.
In other words, you start going to a place and you're like, wait a minute, I know what this feels like. I know where I am. I'm in this, you know, like you said, Texas. It must be Abilene, Texas. Is that what you said?
Abilene, Texas is one of those places on the map you probably don't want to go. Excuse me if anybody's from Abilene.
Yeah, right. We have a huge audience, a huge following from Abilene, Kristine. No, so that's just it. Wherever it is, but it's a trigger. So when you're there and you're not feeling good, and that's what's cool about this kind of work, is when you're not feeling good, that's the trigger that you need to do something different. You need to reframe, you need to reinterpret, or you need to start driving your thoughts down a new track. And you have the tools to do that in this kind of work. And the cool thing is, I know you said you're not a psychologist, but the cool thing is, you know, I've read all kinds of psychology books and talked with all kinds of psychologists on the show. You don't have to be a psychologist to understand the principles and apply them. That's what's really super cool.
No, you do not. And in fact, what we call feelings is very similar to what you just said. Feelings are like the navigational tool that if you're not aware of your thinking, all you have to do is, like you said, just be aware of how you're feeling. And that'll tell you what your thinking is, because it's impossible to have like a low mood or be in a low mood or be in a low place without having low thoughts. So, and I'm not suggesting that you positive think your way out of lowness, okay? But I'm going to tell people that if you just are aware that you're going down that train, it gets you right off. It's like the awareness is what, all of a sudden it pops you off.
Yeah.
And it clears your head.
Creates the space for breakthrough.
Exactly.
Whereas, it's kind of like you're in a box, and then the moment you're aware, it's like you've taken the box off.
Right.
And you liberate your awareness.
And let me relate to, that to grief just a little bit, because grief is definitely something, it's like the one thing I would say you need to actually go through. However, what can happen in grief is that you can get stuck on a train of thought. Usually it's something that might be something that happened the last week of the person's life, or it might be something that you couldn't control. It might be an image that you have of that person, or just anything. But when you see yourself repeating a thought pattern, like a circular thought pattern, where you keep going back to that same thing, and then you keep feeling bad, and you keep going into deep grief, if you can see that, then all of a sudden you can say, oh, okay, well, I know of course I'm going to be feeling bad that I lost this person I loved. But am I feeling bad because I'm also thinking that same thought pattern? And as soon as you are aware of that, it sort of pops you back into the moment, pops you back into presence. And when you're in presence, really, if you're right here, right now, it's all pretty good. I mean, even when you're in grief, it's okay. You're not thinking about your future. You're not thinking about regrets of your past. You're just right here, right now. And that was probably the most powerful lesson that I learned in grief.
It is, and I actually want to re-express what you just said, because it is that profound. The feelings that you have consistently, if you're coming out of grief or any kind of major experience, it's often triggered again and again and again and again and again by the pattern of thought that you keep running around in your head again and again and again. And if you break that pattern of thought, the negative feelings will stop.
Right.
Because in the present moment, it's not happening again and again and again and again.
Right. And if you take that same idea into, say somebody's going to a traditional therapist, and let's say you did have a really bad event in your past, and most people have those. But let's say you're going to a traditional therapist and you're just going to keep talking about your past and bringing up that past event.
It's going to keep triggering the same emotions again and again and again.
Every single time. And I'm not saying that there's not a place for that. There's definitely a place for healing in that. But the thing that I think that is so important for people to recognize is that at some point you've got to let that go and you have to move forward. Now, if you have a really nice life now, and you got a family, you've got kids, but you're still going back to that event, how is that serving you in your life now to keep going back there and having your mood spiral back to that same devastated place that you experience every single time?
Well, and it's really about what I'm hearing is that it's really about the state that you can be in, the resourceful state that you can be in emotionally, because I know we've all had that experience where if we're in a bad place emotionally, somebody could say something funny and it just pisses us off. But if we're in a state where it's like good humored and higher energy, somebody could say the same exact thing in the same exact way and we find it funny.
Right.
Because when we're in a certain state, we interpret things in a certain way.
Absolutely.
And so if we're in a state of grief, then everything is sad and but if we're in a state of empowerment and we're in a state of good mood, we can then take what is happening that might be a very hard experience, but we can transform it and convert it into something that's very positive and useful, even though the circumstance doesn't change.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I find that is one of the most powerful aspects for human beings when we're in loss or we're in suffering of any kind. One of the most powerful things is that it really wakes you up to how great life is. And if you allow it, it really it shatters, for me, I had no idea how my identity was so tied up in being Richard's wife, being his key support person, being a couple. Well, take all that away and, you got me kind of on the floor in pieces, but you also have a new me that's ready to emerge and stand up and say, okay, I'm not that person. Now who am I? I'm like a newborn baby, newborn baby with a lot of wisdom, with 43 years of experience under my belt, and that's can be a really powerful place to stand in.
And I look at this and I'm almost getting like a message from the universe on this one, that if you look at it from a very objective perspective, here you have a man who made his life about not sweating the small stuff and about being happy no matter what.
Right.
And you go through this very intimate experience with him and a very traumatic transition with him leaving this planet.
Yeah.
And yet there's a profound beauty in it as well. And the universe kind of saying, here are the tools, here is the message, and here is the mission being laid in your lap to say, can you be happy no matter what?
Mm-hmm.
Can you use these tools and be a model of example in this life, that these things do work no matter what experience you're going through and no matter what level of intensity?
Well, I can tell you that what really hit me was that you really don't sweat the small stuff when you're living through the big stuff. There's nothing like the big stuff to give you perspective about what the small stuff really is. And I think, you know, you see this in communities that are dealing with natural disaster. I mean, we were sitting on the floor one night after 9/11, and Major Giuliani got on the screen and he popped up and he said, you know, we New Yorkers don't sweat the small stuff because we have the big stuff. You know, we're dealing with the big stuff. And me and Richard just looked at each other and said, there you go. You know, that's what happens. You get instant perspective in life when the stakes are high and you really have to do the big stuff. And that's, if you're in the practice, and that's what the whole Don't Sweat series is, really a life practice. It really is. If you're in the practice, then when things happen and big things happen, you've got the reserve power, you've got the strength. You may not know it, you may not believe it, but I'm a living testament to say you have it. And if I had it, you have it too.
You really are. And the principles that you apply over and over again with sweating the small stuff become a conditioning process for your mind on how to deal with the big stuff. So that it doesn't knock you off course. Yes, it's going to take you off track, and yes, it's going to be hard to deal with emotionally, but this could have been something that would have sent somebody out of orbit, but it's something that you, because of the conditioning process that you went through, you were able to get back on track, and you were able to use this as a very constructive experience, and now have a great responsibility that you're able to seize, and you're touching a lot of lives, and you're improving a lot of people's awareness about this that otherwise wouldn't be touched unless you took on this responsibility in the way that you have. So I applaud what you're doing, Kristine. I really appreciate the insights that you shared with us today.
Thank you.
Are there any final thoughts that you want to leave us with before we share with folks where they can get a copy of your books? And I know we've got a freebie that we're going to give people, and also anybody who's going through grief, we've got some great resources for you. So before we do that, any final thoughts, Kristine?
Yeah, I would really encourage people, no matter what the circumstances of their lives are, to just really realize that oftentimes, our adversity is here to really reveal who we are. It's not going to take you down the way you think it's going to. That actually, if you step in and you take things very presently and you access your inner peace and wisdom throughout, no matter what happens, you're going to come out of this, whatever you're in, and you're going to survive, and not only survive but thrive. And that's what I would encourage people to do. That's what the whole Don't Sweat the Small Stuff philosophy is about. Is about doing that.
It's really great, and you are, my dear, a living testament of that.
Thank you.
We've got the Richard Carlson's Simple Truths to Live By poster. Where can they get a copy of that?
You can get a copy of that from our website, don'tsweat.com, and that's don't without an apostrophe, sweat.com.
Yeah, no apostrophe or the link won't work. Don'tsweat.com. That's Richard Carlson's Simple Truths to Live By poster. And then also I understand that you have a resource available for people that might be going through grief right now, and you've put a lot into this. Where is it?
If you go to Kristine Carlson, that's Kristine, Carlson with a C.com. I have an online support group, and it's a circle where we do meetings in my home. We videotape them. There's segments online. There's like a blog site in there, so people can blog their story and make friends. And it's a pretty cool thing that's happening in there.
Sounds like a great resource. That's KristineCarlson.com. And I know you've got several books out, Kristine. Where can they get a copy of your books as well as all of Richard's books that he's written, the whole Don't Sweat the Small Stuff series?
Well, most of our books are available in any bookstore, really, in Barnes & Noble especially. in any independent bookstore. They carry a selection of Richard's books and as well as mine. And then you can go to Amazon.com or BarnesandNoble.com, and they're all there. And you can go to my website, to the Don'tSweat.com website. We have a whole list in there, and actually it's pretty cool. You just open it up and it's like a library, because Richard basically left a library behind. So
okay. Awesome. So that's don'tsweat.com. That's the best place to go. Sign up for the newsletter. You'll get the Richard Carlson Simple Truths to Live By poster. Kristine's got her online grief support group site, KristineCarlson.com. We'll put all of that on the website, on the screen, and in the description. Kristine, thank you so much for sharing your light with everybody. And
Thank you, James.
You're such a wonderful person. I really appreciate having you on the show.
So are you. What a great show. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Everybody watching and listening, be sure and check out don'tsweat.com, and be sure and like and subscribe to Full Potential Show so you can get more great insights from people like Kristine and freebies that you'll only find right here on the Full Potential Show. Have a wonderful afternoon, everybody, and especially you too, Kristine. Take care.
You too, James. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, that concludes this week's episode of the Full Potential Show, your #1 non-boring source for personal development. I'm James Rick, and if you want to get more positive programming for your brain absolutely free on a weekly basis, just visit fullpotential.com.
If you like the Full Potential Show, you're going to love the Full Potential Club. What would you like most as a Full Potential Club member? Be 2 to 3 times more productive? Do what you're passionate about? Have more energy? Reduce your work hours? Travel the world? Enjoy an amazing lifestyle on a frugal budget? What if you could do them all? James Rick has been there and done it in ways that few people have. For anyone serious about taking their life or business to the next level, you know you've got to do more than just watch. You've got to do. Join James Rick and other like-minded people for an incredible $10 a month at fullpotential.com/club. Be educated. Be empowered. Be the best version of you. fullpotential.com/club. Try it free for 30 days.